So I want to talk to you now a little bit about spiritual care. Now, issues of spirituality are exceedingly important when you talk to the hospice patient and the patient's family members. And so a lot of times when you talk to the patients and the families, they give this high priority, even a more priority over pain and discomfort for those patients. The issue then for us creates this anxiety and this frustration as a hospice team member. So as human beings caring for other human beings, the team members, we wrestle constantly with our own issues. There's this complexity of spiritual matters, and it compounds with the fact that there's this anxiety that takes place and the lack of quick fixes, and there's no easy answers. So spirituality is a lot of times the way that people that are dying give meaning to their suffering. Spirituality and the way that we can define it, it gives meaning to somebody's life, and a lot of times it's expressed in religion terms, and often that's the way I see it. But we have to remember that it can also be expressed in nature and in music and art, in family and in friends as well. And so it can bring this wholeness to the emotional and to the physical and to the intellectual parts of our life. The spirit is the essence of a person. It's actually what makes a person unique. So as people are dealing with illness and they're dealing with death, oftentimes these questions come up of meaning and purpose. Dying gives us an opportunity to find the meaning of life by wrestling with questions like, why did this happen to me, and why now? But that struggle, those questions and that struggle that we have here can result in what we call spiritual distress. Now, spiritual distress is I used to think I was this type of a person. I used to think this was my meaning or this was my purpose, and now I'm not sure what it is because of what is happening to me. So it needs to be supported when that happens. It can be supported by the physician and the social worker, family and friends, and from a volunteer as well. So you can recognize spiritual distress pretty quick by listening to the patient carefully as he or she is starting to struggle with doubt and uncertainty and sadness as well. So hospice team members, we need to rely on, and volunteers, we need to rely on what I like to call the ministry of presence. Because we can rush, we can be in such a hurry to do things or to fix things that we fail and we forget to just be there and just listen to them. Relinquishing the urgency of the workday and the way it demands on us is important. When you get to the family's door, you have to let all of that stress go and release that. I heard a poem a while back. It was called the Worry Tree, and the dad or the man had given somebody a ride home that he had worked with, and they had a really bad day at work, and there was a lot of stressful things that were going on, and they were communicating back and forth about all the stress that had taken place. And he said to the man, he said, "Why don't you come over for dinner? You know, I'm sure we have plenty. Why don't you come over and get away from all the troubles?" And so he accepted. As they were on the way back to the house, the man observed the dad walk up to this big tree and just lay his hands on the tree and stand there for a minute. And after he did that, the look of worry and all that stress, and it just kind of wiped away from the dad's face, and he watched as he walked into the door and smiled really big and hugged his kids, and he kissed his wife. they had dinner and they talked and everything was going so well. And it came time to take his friend home. As they were leaving, he had to ask the question, what were you doing on that tree? The man said, that's my worry tree. Every day when I get home, I place all of my worries and my concerns from that day on that tree. My family is too important to take all of those worries and those concerns into my house with me. And so when I leave the next morning, I just go ahead and I pick up my worries and continue on to work. He said, but the only thing I really noticed though was in the morning, there's not as many worries as I thought there would be. That's almost what we need to think about when we go to see a patient. That all of our troubles and the worries of our day and all those urgent things are just kind of left on that worry tree before we go see the patient. And now we can just focus entirely on that patient and on that patient's family during the visit. And it just lessens the spiritual distress that's there that day. So active listening and this restating for clarification and really even silence and all of these things can assist in spiritual distress. You could offer to pray for them. You could offer to read scripture to them or read poetry, whatever it is you feel comfortable and you know the patient would be and the family would be comfortable with as well. It's important to allow the patient and the family to express the feelings that they have. Even sometimes feeling of anger. Even feeling of anger towards God or to some higher power. Don't worry about that right away. Don't get into fear and feel like you have to correct a family member or a patient because they're angry at God. This is a journey that they're on, and lamenting to God is okay. It's part of the journey. So we can't have all of the answers for sure for the patient's questions. And here's the thing, we can support them in their questions and we can help them. See, the goal is that we can take people and help them transition from this despair to peacefulness. And so religious practice and meditation, journal writing, music and art, all of these can be great spiritual resources. Now, you ask, how do I know what resource I should use? You really can tell when you listen to the patient and you listen to the family. But the overall purpose of hospice spiritual care is to minister to the innermost parts of the patient by giving them an opportunity to accept all of the phases of their life, their past and their present and really even their future. So a key ingredient of a spiritual care is to be able to be open about the patient's history, the need for summation, and to verbalize experience is one of the primary needs of a dying person. So helping to reconcile the history of a personal relationship is often a sensitive area. A good listener relives with the patient all of the positive and the negative aspects of the past, while affirming the human condition, joy and sorrow, strength and weakness, and success and failure, hope and despair as well. And so spiritual care never seeks to convince anyone of anything except for what comes from their own heart and something that comes from their spiritual roots. We accept them as they are and help them to embrace this mystery of their lives, the suffering of their death. And so above all, the patient and the patient's family, they have to feel this genuine human presence from us. It's been said that 3 good days can make up for 30 bad years. Those who have the privilege, and it really is a privilege So those who have the privilege of caring for people while they are dying and bringing hope and comfort to them as they complete their lives. We have been called to serve people at the probably most crucial times of their lives. And so we do this by being sensitive. We're sensitive to their needs. We listen and we're present. That's what's important. We're able to give them just this portion of love and the grace of God that's really ours to give now. So in return, death becomes a great teacher. You see, it teaches us. It teaches us how to love now. It teaches us how to express our love now, not tomorrow. It teaches us how to do it today. And so this process of dying, it can be a meaningful experience. It's one that we can all embrace and celebrate rather than fear and dread.